You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron. Now here's your host, Ethan Haristadoulou.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Greeks Gridiron, and a happy football Sunday. Week 12 is completely upon us today. Lots of games, a lot of fun stuff. Really looking forward to all the matchups of today. But we are talking Monday Night Football. If you haven't checked out my predictions for today, make sure you do so when you're wrapped up here. But we're looking at Panthers and 49ers, two NFC teams jockeying for position, of course, within the playoff standings. Panthers, a good 6-5 right now. And then the 49ers themselves, who stayed alive during the absence of Brock Purdy under the captaining of Mac Jones at quarterback. We have a really good game here, and one that was surprisingly further apart, according to the books, than I would have anticipated seeing, just because of some of the gutsy play we've gotten from Carolina, but we'll talk about it. So comment down below, let me hear from you, thoughts, opinions on the matchup, who you like and why, and as a reminder, no betting advice here, we're just talking football. That being said, like I said, Panthers and 49ers here. I think the first thing we got to look at and discuss is, of course, going to be Christian McCaffrey and the fact that he's more than likely going to have on this football game here. He is the heart and soul of this 49ers offense, and honestly, it might even be this 49ers team right now, as he leads the NFL in scrimmage yards with 1,439 yards from scrimmage. He has like a near 700 split on those yard totals, with 11 touchdowns for the team as well. That is by far the most as a 49er offensive player. I think it really starts with Carolina's ability to slow him down, and the way you look at Carolina's run defense, I've got to say, much improved from where they were last season, as by far the league's worst run defense this year, sitting around middle of the pack. So a far improved unit who has had some really good games this season as well overall. If they can slow him down, and if they can muddy up the waters a little bit for him, it could be a route to success for this Carolina Panthers team. The one question I have, though, is just with the threat of Brock Purdy now, is that going to be as possible? That's probably one of my biggest concerns, and we'll talk a little bit about Brock Purdy in a second. But I mean, you look at like what he was able to do last week in Brock Purdy's return. Obviously, Purdy doing a great job taking care of the football, but Christian McCaffrey going for about 120 yards total through the ground, through the air and on the ground. Finished off the game with 3 touchdowns on top of that as well. He has been a monster for this team this season, and honestly, one of those people that if the 49ers find themselves in a playoff spot, and ultimately even further than just a playoff spot, I mean, someone who deserves at least to be within the conversation of MVP, because he really did help put this team on his back. I know Mac Jones did a really good job in the interim while Brock Purdy was away dealing with his turf toe injury, but Christian McCaffrey, like I said, heart and soul of the offense of this team, and with how banged up they are, I would argue the heart and soul of this team right now as a whole, helping to keep them alive and in the playoff hunt and in a race that is extremely tight in the NFC West. He deserves a ton of credit for what he's been doing. The second thing I want to get into is, of course, Bryce Young, and kind of the version of Bryce Young we're going to see, because he's an interesting quarterback to watch and somebody that I have been very open and honest about. I'm not super high on, and I know he's coming off of a wild game where he pushed about 450 yards through the air, big game-winning drive. He actually has 10 game-winning drives in his career, wildly enough, and on top of that, even crazier, that's 83% of his career wins total. A vast majority of his career wins have come off of the back of his game-winning drives, which is an interesting thing. But Brock Purdy, I feel like, is a bit of a mixed bag, because you get some really good games and then you also get some really bad games. And I think it's fun to watch the doubters and the people that are rooting for him go back and forth, because it feels like they each get like to one-up each other every other, if not like every couple of weeks. So it's a very fun dynamic to watch play itself out. That being said, I think a big piece of why we're seeing some real good success from Bryce Young this season, especially during this later portion of the year, has to do, of course, with Ted McMillan and what he's able to do. He's emerging as a serious threat at wide receiver for this team. And I mean, he leads the team in receiving yards by about a 500-yard margin or so, with 748 on the season. He's got 54 catches and 4 touchdowns. If the passing game opens up and Bryce Young and Ted McMillan can get rolling, that could be a problem for San Francisco, because for what it's worth, their run defense, like upper third of the NFL, and they're like right at the line of that. So like within that top 12 team margin, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. You still have Rico Dowdle coming out of the backfield. And if, you know, the defense has to back up a little bit, a guy or two less in the box on a down by down basis, Rico Dowdle maybe a slower couple of weeks than what we were seeing him have a few weeks ago, but still an effective running back, someone that you can absolutely rely on if the passing game gets going. It's been tough for San Francisco this season. Obviously, the injuries play a large factor in that. You have no Nick Bosa. You have no Michael Williams. You have no Fred Warner. And Fred Warner, obviously, the best off-ball linebacker in the NFL. And dropping into coverage, I mean, he's as good as a defensive back with the way he plays. And so you lose him. You lose two key guys that were supposed to be like the anchors of your pass rush. And that pass rush has suffered in San Francisco. They are league worst in sacks at 12. And then on top of that, pressure rate as well. They cannot really generate anything, and it's really coming off of the back of just like the defense having to make some big plays and forcing turnovers for them to keep that defense in check, because they're not making quarterbacks uncomfortable. They're not getting home. They're not really doing anything to force teams into, second and long, third and long situations. So it really does come down to what version of Bryce Young do we see, and how effective can this 49ers defense be at stopping the pass? Because it's one of those things that I'm just not super impressed with, and it's not to their fault. Like, injuries are injuries. It's part of the NFL. It's just been a huge problem for this 49ers team. We did see them look pretty good last week, albeit that was against Jacoby Brissett and the Arizona Cardinals, who, they are what they are, so that is what that is. But ultimately, 249 yards passing through the air, which is fifth most in the NFL, 21 passing touchdowns allowed, which is tied for fourth most in the NFL. It has not been easy. So if you let Bryce Young get going, it's only going to open up and make things easier for Rico Dowdle. And the San Francisco 49ers run defense hasn't been all that impressive either. So they're about league average, if I'm remembering correctly. So just one of those things you definitely need to keep an eye on, because there feels like there might be a little bit of a mismatch brewing over there. It's going to be up to a guy like a Diamador Lenore to make sure he really shuts things down when he's being matched up with Tet McMillan. I think the last thing, of course, and this one kind of goes without saying, but it's at least worth mentioning here. In his first game back last week, Brock Purdy looked pretty good. And again, you could say, well, it was Arizona. It is what it is. But 200 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 73% completion rate, super efficient, did an excellent job taking care of the football. Hooked up with George Kittle a couple of times for a pair of touchdowns, and one of them was a absolute beauty going down the right sideline, caught it right at the right side of the end zone. It was beautiful there. Carolina's defense against the pass about league average as well, sitting at 16th. in the NFL. So I think this will be a good test for both sides here. Again, it's the NFL. You don't want to take too much away from it, but Arizona's in its own way right now. So I'll be curious to see how this team or how Brock Purdy fares against a team that, in my opinion, in a better spot, playing better defense than Arizona is. And just, again, it was a one-game sample size. So, and we've seen some up and down play from the limited action we've gotten from Brock Purdy this year. So I'll be curious what we actually get from him in a second game against a team that's vying for a playoff spot, who has shown some really good defensive stands this season. You think back to games like against the Packers this season. They've had some really good games where this defense has been locked down and been problematic. So I think this is a much better test and like just kind of a better measuring stick of where Brock Purdy is coming off of this injury. That being said, as for who I think is going to win the matchup here, I mean, again, like I mentioned, we don't do the betting here, but I do like to check the books from time to time, especially on these like primetime games here. And to see the 49ers are just straight up a massive over touchdown favorite, technically, -7.5 is what I saw. That's pretty impressive stuff. I thought that maybe, I figured obviously San Francisco being a favorite, but I didn't think by a whole touchdown because, again, we've seen good defensive play from the Panthers defense. We have seen Bryce Young have some really good games throwing the football. We've seen Rico Dowdle run wild a number of times this season for this Carolina Panthers team. I just feel like there is a route where this game ends up being a little bit closer. And honestly, the defense, again, in San Francisco is a big concern. I'm going to take the 49ers here, but I like them something in the ballpark of like 28-24. I don't think San Francisco, even with it being in San Fran, I don't see them as that heavy of a favorite here. I could be wrong, and maybe I'm just misreading something, but I do have a feeling that the Carolina Panthers hang around in this one and definitely make it interesting. Like, this is one of those Monday Night Football games that you might look at the slate and think like, oh, Panthers in there? I mean, that's probably going to end up being a really good contest between these teams because the Panthers do have a lot of fight. And regardless of like my feelings on just what I think of Bryce Young as a franchise quarterback and everything, like I got to respect what they're at least doing over there in Carolina, and I see it. So I definitely think they're putting up a good fight, and they're going to make it a tough one on San Francisco, but I do think at home the 49ers should get the job done, especially with the fact that they've got their franchise QB back in tow in Brock Purdy. So give me San Fran 28-24. Good contest, fun one to wrap up week number 12 of the NFL season. Comment down below. Let me hear from you, your thoughts, your opinions, who you think's going to win, and all. But until next time, I'll see you all on Tuesday for Power Rankings. Enjoy your Sunday slate of games. Until next time, have a good one.